Thank you for watching. And today's walk-in is Christy from Create Your Happy. Hi, Christy.
Hello, how are you today? I'm super excited to be here and have just a real conversation about happiness.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be interesting, really interesting, because you're a happiness hussy and I'm a happiness expert. So I want to see where all this is going to lead us.
Yeah.
A bunch of happiness. Well, to start with, tell us about your podcast, Create Your Happy.
Yeah, my podcast is Create Your Happy. I'm currently in the third season, although it's kind of the fourth season. I'm going to save that story for another time. But yeah, I just reached 100 episodes earlier this year. And it is really all about consciously creating the life that you desire and about how to create your happy. And spoiler alert, this creating your happy isn't about anything outside of you. It's all about discovering what has always been within and clearing the way so that you can live a life that is full of happiness.
Mm-hmm. Is your podcast with guests or just by yourself or both?
I have done both. The first, again, I'm back to this weird thing because I'm on season 3, but I did 3 sort of previous seasons. I called it 2.5 because I wasn't sure what I was doing. But all of the episodes of the first 2.5 seasons had guests. And so I had these incredible, juicy conversations about all the topics related to creating your happiness and creating a life by design. And then this latest season, I decided to try something different. I wanted to mix it up and do something new and fresh. And so I am doing a solo season right now. It is all about relationships. It is, spoiler alert, about the relationship that you have with yourself. And I do talk about interpersonal relationships and dynamics with other, between people. But I really find that the most important thing that we can do is foster this really healthy, loving relationship first with ourselves. And then it ripples out and really impacts absolutely everything. So you'll find that my show is very much bringing it back to you so that you can step into your authentic life, create that life by design, and discover the happiness that is actually your intended state of being, your natural state of being, instead of going through life seeking for it where it's not.
Exactly. And people have to understand that inside of you, that's where the happiness is.
Yep.
Nobody
It's not
can.
out there.
Yeah, sometimes other people can make you happy, but if you don't have it inside of yourself, then you don't have anything to mirror back. So even when people try to make you happy, you're not happy because you don't have anything to mirror back.
Exactly. And oh my gosh, I've been in relationships like that too, right? It's your happiness is your responsibility. And then what happens is when you get around other people, they amplify what's already within you, right? So it's not actually them making you happy, it's you making you happy and them amplifying or magnifying that, right? It's just like 10xing what is within you when you find other people who are on the same wavelength. They're also happy and they're living their best life. And when you come together, absolute magic. This is what I talk a lot about on my show as well. Really starting with yourself, because then when you find those people, your people, the ones that love and accept you just as you are, it just amplifies what you have within. That love, that happiness, that joy, that peace, that freedom that you already have is now just able to be projected out into the world with even greater abundance.
And what I want to let's see if you feel the same way. When I teach happiness, I teach them it's not about only like happy thoughts only and only think positive and all the things. I teach that like with the fears, sadness, and anger, all those feelings have there are reasons as well, but you don't get stuck in there.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Anything less would be like spiritual bypassing, toxic positivity, as they call it, to pretend that those other emotions don't exist. And actually, that's what keeps you stuck in more of those negative emotions, is when you resist them and you don't allow the space for them. To me, this intended state of happiness means just awareness that this is your natural state, and that those other emotions that don't feel good, that don't feel aligned or congruent for you, that just feel maybe restrictive or constrictive instead, are things that as long as you don't resist them or try and avoid them, they will just go away on their own, right?
Mm-hmm.
They will not stick around. And the beautiful thing about this human experience is that we are actually so complex as humans, and we can feel many emotions even at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. I know people out there can resonate with feeling joy and grief simultaneously at the loss of a loved one, because there is so much love and connection from that person. That's why you're grieving, in fact, most of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of this loss meant something to you. And so instead of limiting ourselves and saying like, well, I can only feel good things and bad things are going to ruin my life. No, we make space for it all, knowing
Mm-hmm.
that those happy, peaceful, loving, joy, blissful, positive feelings that we seek are actually our intended state. The rest of it is going to come and go, and we can always return to that base state when we choose to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's I put it in the same way, the base state.
Yeah.
That's your baseline. That's where you feel comfortable, and you can't go around saying like, oh, I have to be happy. No, like
Yeah.
you don't have to be happy. When you feel some other way, you have to feel and process those emotions, because after you process that emotion, then you can go back to happy.
Yeah. I've had people say like, oh, you can't be happy all the time. And I guess in a way that's true. Maybe they're being really like super, with the words. I think you can be happy, like maybe not every single moment, because obviously sometimes other emotions are going to feel more strong, right? They're
Yeah.
going to distract you from that base state. But I would argue that happiness is always available, right? It's
Yeah.
just a matter of whether you're being in that state or whether you're being in another state that takes over or feels a little bit more compelling. And like I said, we're complex. So I believe that we can feel many things at one time. Yes, you can be stressed out and worried that something might not go your way, and you can still be happy and grateful for other things, right? We aren't linear as people, so we are able to, if we're able to make more space in our experience, we can actually increase the depth of our human experience. And I think that's actually pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. I believe the same way that you can feel the same different emotions in this different times, because you can feel the sadness because you need to feel that sadness in that moment, but you don't stay there. And like after the sadness goes away, you go back to happy. You don't
Yeah.
hold on to that. That's the thing. I did the same way. You don't hold on to happiness,
Yeah.
because that will like process and it will comes back, and you'll feel a little bit less, a little bit more this day. Some days we have periods, so we might be angry at somebody.
Yeah, life is gonna life, and we are human beings, and so we are gonna
Exactly.
have a lot of experiences. I think it's really, this whole journey I think is just fascinating and interesting, and I love humans. I think that we are so interesting, and I find other humans just fascinating. I kind of love reality TV for this, because it's just humans in the wild, if you will. They're just peopling, and I find it so interesting to watch other people. Not because I'm judging them or anything. I just think it's so interesting, the number of possible experiences that we can create for ourselves. And I love to witness someone doing something that I would not do. I just think it's interesting. Like, how cool. I'm glad that you're doing that. Like, no, thank you for me. I don't want to, I don't really want to bungee jump or jump out of a plane, but it's really cool that someone else is doing that and can share their experience, because now I don't have to do that thing, but I can learn and sort of experience it through their story of it. And I think what you touched on there is so important, that we don't stay attached to anything really, because the more attached we are, the more suffering we end up creating for ourselves. And if an attachment comes in two forms, right? It's like clinging to or resisting. Both of those are forms of attachment, essentially believing that something should be the way that you want it to be, or like really being stuck on your preferences, will lead you down a road of a lot of suffering if you're really, really attached to having your preferences come to fruition, because, well, frankly, it does not work that way. Like,
I want your opinion on this thing. You know how people sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times they get offended if they think they get offended that that person did this. But if they pause for a second, they actually upset that that person didn't do what you wanted them to do.
100%. I think a lot of times it is that, or possibly or I guess, it's just evoking an emotion in you that is identifying an unmet need a lot of the times, right? Where someone doesn't meet our expectations, it can trigger our awareness of an unmet need, although it might not be conscious. We might not know that that's what it is. We might just have this emotional disturbance, if you will, at what this other person did. And ultimately, if we can start to let go of those expectations of other people, we can really experience a whole nother level of freedom, because we can't control anyone else. We can only control ourselves. And so the more time we spend fighting against what other people are doing or saying or thinking or believing or preferring or any of these things, the more suffering we have. Like, let's change that, right?
Mm-hmm. I saw a really funny quote on the internet as well. It says, if somebody hates you, let them be, because that's their suffering. Let them suffer. Oh, don't bother. If somebody hates you, don't bother with it. Let them suffer.
I mean, here's the thing that I realized is that happy people do not go around hurting other people on purpose. And if they do accidentally hurt someone, they make amends. Unhappy people, on the other hand, spew and project their unhappiness, their insecurities, their inner pain onto other people. And so when I look around and I observe, and this happens when you're in the public eye, when you're an author or podcaster, people make comments, right? And so you've got to develop the so-called thick skin, but it's not about protecting yourself, in my opinion. It's actually about just getting understanding about how people are, because happy people don't do that. And so when I see someone trolling people, saying hateful or hurtful comments, now I always approach things with the understanding that people are doing the best that they can with the resources and understanding that they have in that moment. And I do believe that when we know differently, right, we can behave differently. We can do things differently. And so if I see someone being intentionally hurtful, and let's be honest, people that are trolling people on the internet or writing rude comments or critiquing their nose ring, for example, I might have heard that one. It's not actually about me. It's not, because happy people don't do that. So it's not about me. It's not actually that my nose ring is a problem to random guy on the internet. It's that he doesn't feel good about himself. That's why these people tend to say these hurtful things. It's actually probably completely unconsciously an attempt to feel better about themselves. And so when I see that, I think, oh my gosh, like they are hurting so much that they feel the need to make someone else feel worse just to get a little leg up, to feel a little bit better about themselves. I mean, it doesn't really work. We all know this. We've all done this. Oh my gosh, we're humans. We've all at some point in time compared ourselves or tried to, just be a little bit better than, or posture ourselves as slightly, superior than, especially our siblings or whatnot. I didn't have any siblings, but my kids all the time, they're constantly trying to like be better than each other. And it's natural, but it doesn't serve us. So we've got to let that go. And when we see people behaving like that, what they need is actually more love and compassion, right? It doesn't mean anything about me. So I don't have to let it hurt or bother me in any way, shape, or form. I want to send that person back all the love, because I know they're hurting inside in order to behave that way.
And not to that, definitely not to take it personally.
Yeah. It's very freeing when you start to live that way, because you realize it's not something that you should be taking personally. It's actually their pain just coming outward.
And what happens a lot of time, though, and it does hurt, not a lot of time, but certain situations, those people who are hurting, they don't like other people to be happy.
Absolutely.
And they see if somebody happy, they have to go and say something nasty.
Yeah.
When they say that nasty thing, that they get the kick, but the kick that they're getting is wrong. It's has some kind of trigger to whatever their hurt is.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that never makes you feel better. And I can say this from having done that, like probably a lot as a child, right? Like I think as we grow and mature, we start to realize things that do and don't work for us, and then we can choose healthier options that actually get the intended outcome. However, a lot of us have experienced traumas along the way that can keep us stuck in those patterns and those behaviors that actually really don't serve us. And when we are stuck in this state of essentially survival mode, we can't see the other options available. We can't see that actually,
Mm-hmm.
if I just worked on myself and made myself feel better, I don't have to make anyone else feel worse. And I don't have to make anyone else wrong in order to be right. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be an either or kind of life. We can have the both and. And that really opens up because now you can start to see a lot more possibilities, right? You can now, from this more calm state, more centered state, your critical thinking comes back online instead of being in survival and just going on autopilot. Now you can actually act with intention, which I call it conscious creation, which is to create life by design and do the things that, are meant for you to do, those things that your heart desires to do without worrying about what other people think or what other people are going to say, and just to go confidently be yourself, which can be really a challenge. It really can be. We've been told almost our whole lives, most people, that who we are is not good enough unless we are this or that, or, model thin and super young looking and have the perfect clothes and the perfect hair and the perfect teeth and the perfect everything. But I don't think that anybody has any of that. So we spend all of this time chasing the house, the car, the partner, the body, like all of it. We spend all this time chasing. It's actually a distraction that keeps us from the very happiness, the love, the peace, the joy, the freedom that we seek, because we're looking in the wrong places. And the
Yeah.
longer we spend looking in all of those wrong places, which are all the things outside of ourselves, we miss what has always been there all along, which is that all of that exists already within you. It's not out there, it's in here.
Yeah, they just look like that. This the appearance, and they don't see anything beyond the appearance.
Yeah.
They don't see the inside of the person, and they don't feel the connection with the person. So even with them, they don't feel the connection with themselves as
That's
well.
it. Yep.
So they just see other people, just the projection, clothes, hair, what they have, and themselves as well. Clothes, hair, what they have, what they don't have, compared to what that person has and doesn't have. But that's not the reality. Nothing to do
Absolutely.
with life whatsoever in real world.
For sure. And the truth is, all judgment is effectually self-judgment, right? Because we can't judge another person without also judging ourselves at the same time. Maybe it's posturing, it's still judgment, right? Even if you were to say, oh, I'm so jealous of that person, I really want what they have, you're still judging yourself. If you're feeling jealous, it's probably because you don't feel you can have that thing, which often causes people to lash out, right? And make sure that that other person who has that thing knows for sure they shouldn't have it either, because you don't have it and you don't think that you can have it. So you don't want anybody to have it. But it's not pie, right? And if it were pie, there'd be enough for everyone. So we don't have to go about trying to find it that way. We can actually just worry about ourselves. We don't have to worry about those people. And if we see someone that we could be jealous of, but we believe we can have it, guess what? That jealousy turns into inspiration. And now you're inspired to go and create that thing, which obviously you wouldn't even be aware of. It wouldn't even come into your consciousness or your awareness if you weren't like wanting to potentially have it.
And that's why I teach as well about the jealousy, that you're not actually, if you pay attention, you're not actually jealous of that person.
Yeah.
You're jealous either of what they have or what they are doing, not the person itself, but something that they have or they do. And then you have to adjust and think of like, is it something, like you were just saying, is it something that I want? Is it something I can do? And how can I make it happen? Or just, if you can make it happen, then just let it go.
I mean, depends what it is, obviously, right? But that tension that gets created is usually because of your own lack of belief in yourself that you can have it. Or it could be like a worthiness thing, right? To say like, I'm so jealous that they have this, this perfect relationship. I wouldn't be jealous if I didn't think I could have it for myself. If I think I can have it for myself, I'm just going to go have it too. Then I don't have to be jealous. I'm just inspired, like, hey, look what I can create also,
Mhm.
because that means it's possible. And so I take that and I run with it and I go and create that for myself in my way, right? Because
Mhm.
this life isn't about fitting into the molds and, being successful or happy according to someone else.
Mhm.
That's not going to work either. And I think a lot of people do chase success or happiness or this illusion that they have everything together. And the truth is, your authentic self is the most important piece, because if you're not being authentically you, you can chase someone else's version of success all day long. You're not going to be happy. You're going to be miserable doing all those things that you didn't want to do that aren't
Mhm.
actually aligned for you. And so
Mhm.
doing this sort of like self-discovery excavation to figure out who you are and what you want is a crucial foundational piece when it comes to creating, the experiences and the states of being that you actually want to create.
Mhm. And that's why the most important thing that I teach is like to find out what makes you happy.
Yeah.
That's the most important, because when you know what makes you happy, then you can do more of that thing, or that's the way it goes. Instead of looking at all those other happy people and thinking like, oh, I can't have that. Maybe, and then they try to do that, and then it doesn't make them happy, and they're like, well, it like, why I'm not happy still? I'm doing what
Yeah.
she's doing. She's so happy doing that. Why I'm not happy doing this? Because that's not your happy.
And that's also another example of seeking the happiness outside of yourself, right? Because the truth is that happiness actually starts from within. And when you're happy within and then you do the things that you really want to do, then it's just amplified, right? It's like finding a partner. You're happy, you love and accept yourself. And then you find a partner who loves and accepts themselves and loves and accepts you. It's magnified. It's like a million times more epic because you are really magnifying what is within you and making that the foundation. Now, if your foundation is kind of rocky, that's going to play out in the experiences that you have, and no amount of chasing success or happiness out there is going to solve the problem that's actually in here. I actually recently did an episode for my podcast called You Don't Have a Relationship Problem, You Have an Identity Problem, because I
Okay.
feel that most of our external problems come back to not knowing who we really are. We're so much more than a meat suit. We're not just this body. You know what? You're not even your thoughts are not you. They're not all you. Your emotions are not you. You are so much more beyond all of that. And when you remember and recognize who you really are, a lot of that really doesn't seem to be a problem anymore, because you are now operating with this new awareness and just see things differently. You're not looking out there. You're looking in here. And everything that you've ever wanted was always in here all along.
Hmm. But how can people learn to do that? Learn to look and find it from inside.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I don't know that there's a one size fits all sort of answer, of course, because 8.1 billion of us on this planet, we've all had a different experience. I have a few tools that I like to use with people and for myself. Self discovery is like peeling back the layers of an onion. So I think that there are many tools that you can do for this. Journaling can be a really great one. I actually created a journal. You can see it behind me here. It is a 90-day self discovery journal, which just has prompts so that you can start to ask yourself some questions to get to know who you were or who you are. What I was going to say is that about 10 years ago, I was in a marriage to my kid's father, and I completely lost track of who I was. I say that I was suffering from just a momitis, which is really to
Mhm.
say that outside of my labels and my role as a mother and a wife, I felt pretty lost. I didn't know who Christy was anymore. And
Mhm.
I set upon this journey of figuring it out because I wanted to know, like, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? Who even am I outside of these couple of labels? And at one point, I worked with a coach who really asked me that question, like, who are you without those roles and labels? And the reflection that I came to at the end of the day, which I could no longer argue with, is that I am love. Like, at the end of the day, that is my essence. I am love. The labels, they're very limiting, they're very restrictive, and we're actually not. I believe that we are divine beings having a human experience, and that we are creators of our own experience, which is not to say that we create everything. So anybody out there being like, well, I didn't create this situation. Well, we're co-creating. And those things that you didn't create, you are still creating your response to it. So while bad things maybe happen to you, that's not your fault, and you didn't deserve that. So we'll put that very clearly on the table. That was not something that you deserve. You don't deserve bad things to happen to you, no matter what. Okay? No one deserves that. And you're the only one who can shift it. You're the only one who can change the story and move forward. You're the only one who can use and take that experience, take that wisdom and embody it so that you can create a new experience moving forward. So many people, and I am one of them, for a while, and I finally figured myself out, but for a while I stayed stuck, not knowing how to dislodge myself from that stuckness. And that, when I say stuck, it was sort of like, I define it as like this incongruence, like this tension between where I was and where I wanted to be. Right. So it's creating this tension,
a lot of people that I have that, a lot of people have that. I still have that. I'm like already in a different point from that one before, but I still, maybe it's pretty much is ongoing until all the way to the end of your life, because you're going to get to that next point, but then you're going to have like still, you're happy in that next point, but you still have new goals. Like, because your life's not going to end when you're 30. Your life's not going to end when you're 40. Your life's not going to end all the way. Like, I'm 42 right now. For me to live to 80 years old, I have to live as much as I already lived.
I'm going for 100
years.
I am 45 and I'm going for 100. So we're just going all in.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I have so many years to live, and I'm like, my goals are maybe made up for like next 5 years, I would say, like kind of this way. But 30 years from now, when I'm going to be 4, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in the 70s, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing in real life and what the life's going to be around.
I'll tell you what, like 10 years ago, I would never in a million years have guessed where I would be today. From where I was standing, again, in survival mode, overwhelmed, overthinking, stressed out, anxious. Before my feet hit the floor in the morning, I was like an anxious wreck. I would never have thought that I would find this incredible relationship that I have today. I would never have thought that I would have multiple published books. I would never have thought that I would have a podcast in the top 10% global podcasts. Like, I just never, ever would have allowed myself to dream that big when I was in that stuck state. Like, I had ideas and I had, some goals, if you will, or things that I thought I would like to do, but I didn't fully believe in myself. Right. And that was the ticket. And I want to add something else to the conversation that can really help shift things, because so much, and I just actually posted earlier on my Facebook about this, so much of the coaching industry is focused on, there's something wrong with you, you have this problem, and let's go fix it. You're broken and you need fixing or healing. And so my take is a little bit different on this, because I feel like when you're in that state, that's a state of lack, a state of scarcity, a state of not good enoughness. And I propose that we're already whole, that we already have everything that we need, that happiness is our intended state, and you're not broken, you don't need fixing. So then what, right? We're still human, we're still going to continue to evolve, but what if we shift this? Just try this on. What if you're already whole? What if you're perfect just the way that you are? What if there's nothing broken? What if nothing needs fixing? And then from this state of wholeness, you could continue to grow and evolve, now from a state of abundance rather than the state of lack or scarcity. How would that shift the experience of growth for you when it's not the endless hamster wheel of personal improvement and personal growth and trying to be better and better and better and be better and better and better? What if you were already good enough and then you could still continue to grow and evolve from there? How would that feel?
Yeah. And then from there, you're just going to do those things that you do and have more new goals, not as new goals, ideas come to your mind. It was like, oh, what if I'll do this? And then you try and you do this new thing, then your new thing comes up. Like, what if I'll try doing this new thing? So, and you have multiple things that you're going to be doing. Maybe one thing is not going to work out. That's fine too.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, it's
fine.
all okay. Again, your attachment to it is going to impact your experience of it, right? You try something, it doesn't work out. It doesn't mean you're a colossal failure or you made a massive mistake. It means that that thing didn't work out.
Mhm.
So you pivot, you try something different. You don't beat yourself up about it. Like I had this sort of like aha moment in my last marriage where to be honest, I got to preface this with saying I had spent a lot of time complaining and blaming and waiting for my partner to change.
Mhm.
And all of that time I spent focused on him, guess where I was looking? At this girl right here. And
Mm.
so when I came to the realization, like, oh my gosh, I'm the common denominator in every one of my problems, every one of my struggles, every one of my challenges, guess who's there? It's me. Channeling Taylor Swift here a little bit. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And that can go one of two ways, right? When we come to this conclusion, society would teach us that we are awful and bad and wrong and can't believe I did this and I've super messed it all up and I'm just an awful person, the guilt and the shame, and that is such a hard place to recover from. So if you ever find yourself in that state of realizing like, oh my gosh, I'm the problem, it's me. Now let's not be taking responsibility for other people.
Mhm.
Okay? We're taking responsibility just for ourselves. We're not taking over responsibility for other people's behaviors. But when we realize my contribution, right? We take radical responsibility for what I've put into the situation. That puts me in a really empowered situation because I'm also the common solution to all of these problems. Because guess what? In all the solutions, there I am too. And when we can get out of this survival mode thinking, right? The fight, flight, freeze, fawn, where our
Mhm.
brain's actually like on power save mode, I like to say, because our critical thinking is on pause while our body is just don't die. So if we
Mhm.
can move through that, and that's what I talk about in my book, Unstuck for Women, I call it the spiral stopper method. It's moving through that initial survival mode reaction piece, right? So that we can respond, so that we can consciously choose, so that we can create with intention, so that we can show up and be the person that we really want to be, the one that feels congruent and aligned for us, not this version of us that's going to make someone else happy, because that will make you not happy.
Mhm.
Version that is in alignment with this intended state of happiness, right? This version of you that feels really, really, really good. That's
Mhm.
where you deserve to be living and creating from, and that is your superpower. So I invite all of the listeners out there to try that on and just make that little shift, because you are so much more powerful than most of us give ourselves credit for.
Mhm. But I want to ask now a question. How, what kind, were you the same way before the marriage? Or what kind of personality you had before? Because I had different 10, 11 years marriage experience. But I'm still almost divorced, and I also found myself again. But what kind of person you were before that?
You know, I've always been a pretty happy person. And again, I think it's our intended state. And
Mhm.
when we let things get in the way, and again, I'm not saying this because it's your fault, but because
Mhm.
awareness helps us to change and shift our patterns. When we let things get in the way of our happiness, we suffer, right? When we, for example, I became a professional accountant, not because I had a love and joy for accounting, but because it was easy. It was good money, which is, the expected sort of
Mhm.
pathway in this capitalist system. And because it would make my mom happy, right?
Mhm.
And so I became a professional accountant and I hated it. And so I wasn't really being me. And in fact, it's funny, I was telling this story earlier on a podcast in a conversation as well. The first week on the job, we did this personality assessment as a group of the new staff becoming the new chartered accountants at the time. And what I can tell you for sure is that I don't remember which test it was. I think someone maybe said it was like the disc test. It was colors. What I do remember is that they plotted it on the whiteboard thing, on the projector thing, where everybody landed in this test, and everybody was in, I can't remember if it was blue or green. Everyone else was in the same quadrant of this pie. They were all analytical and very like black and white thinkers, and I was like dead opposite. I was like, one of these things is not like the other
Mhm.
situation. And I was like, oh, like I was the friendly, outgoing, positive, open-minded person. And I should have known then it wasn't a fit, but like, hey, you've now invested all this time in getting a degree and this, this extra pieces of it. And so I continued on because, well, what do you do until you know what else you're going to do? Until
Mhm.
I had my first son. And then I left the accounting and I never really looked back. Although I did teach some accounting after that. I am pretty much a natural teacher. That feels way more aligned for me to teach accounting than to actually do the accounting, which
Mhm.
is strange, but I'm not doing that anymore either. But it's peeling. It's like peeling the layers of the onion. Like, who am I? I don't know until I start to strip away and unlearn who I'm
Mhm.
not. Right. And this helps me to start to discern who am I and where do I end and where do other people begin, so that I know, especially helpful when you're engaging with someone and there's a heavy emotion in the room. It's super helpful to know that's not mine, right?
Mhm.
That's theirs. I know where I end and I know where, know where that sort of boundary is. Now I don't have to worry about like energetically protecting myself or, or putting a bubble around myself or any of these things, or over empathizing and taking on their emotions. I know where I end. And so I
Mhm.
can look at that more objectively and I can help them and I can empathize with them and I can be in the muck with them, but I don't end up taking that, outside of the job, which is a very helpful skill when you're in this industry.
Mhm. And in the beginning, we're talking about the tools of starting to feel happy. In the beginning, you might use those tools to be happy and to bring more awareness and everything like this. But there's going to be one moment there's going to click. You don't have to do any of that. You just like constantly there, and you can just feel other emotions, do other things, and everything.
Yeah.
But your core base is just always this happiness, and it
Yeah.
doesn't always have to be showing like right now we're reflecting each other's happy emotions as well. But sometimes I do, like when I have on my cycle, I have this moment where I don't feel so good and I have to take like a day off. I still feel happy, but I still feel sad as well.
Yeah. Of
Because
course,
and that
we're able to feel so many things at once. It's actually a gift, if you ask me.
hmm but and the most important part that I learned from after that is not to feel guilty about that.
For sure. Guilt serves well, it serves a small purpose, right? As far as information, but I don't know if that's the guilt that really serves us. That's just the information that's delivered in the guilt package can be
hmm
helpful, but the guilt itself, where we end up beating ourselves up or, God forbid, spiraling into like a shame spiral where now we've done something wrong, but we are wrong and we're bad. Neither of those really motivate us to move forward. The society has sort of put this idea into a lot of our minds that we can guilt ourselves into motivation. And I had an argument with my son about this once because he would argue that it does work. And I would argue that it may work, quote unquote, but it
hmm
sucks. You don't
hmm
feel good. It's not uplifting. And it's not
hmm
actually going to give you the ability to reach your highest potential because it's like carrying a brick in your backpack
hmm
where you are constantly feeling the weight of this dragging you back. And the thing is you can't fully move forward when you've got this weight pulling you back, at least not at the the top speed or the highest quality of life that you could be creating.
Because now you're not doing it because you enjoy it, you do it
Right.
because you feel guilty instead of doing it because you can find you enjoy it.
Yeah. And that is, of course, if that guilt even motivates you to do the thing, more often than not, the guilt actually sucks us in and keeps us down and keeps us from doing anything.
hmm
And in fact, the guilt sometimes can even serve as, in our mind, thinking we're doing something because we're feeling guilty about it. So our brain is like, oh, well, we're feeling bad about it. So that's enough. Right.
hmm
And so we don't even do the thing. I think a lot of people, expect that. It seems maybe it's been marketed to us this way, right? That motivation is something that you will get and then you will go do the thing. But that's not actually how that works. Nobody gets
That's
motivated
completely
to go to the
opposite.
gym while they're laying on the couch. It does not work that way. And you
hmm
have to start taking the steps to get the motivation. Once you start taking the steps, that's when the motivation kicks in. And it's not going to be there every single time. When you approach things with this understanding, now you're a little bit more realistic and you're not waiting for motivation to come and help you do the thing. You don't end up stuck in analysis paralysis or, just waiting for the right time. You just start taking those baby steps in the direction that you want to go. Everything becomes clear when you start doing that. That's another thing. People think they need clarity before they take action. And that is also going to keep you stuck because clarity most often does not entirely show up before you start doing the thing. Like you'll be here waiting for I'm just going to wait until I have all the details, the whole plan.
Everything is
that
perfect.
time will never come. Exactly. We're waiting for things to be perfect and we're waiting for an illusion. So, clarity comes when you take action too, right? And it's funny because people are so worried to make a mistake, right? They don't want to do it wrong. They don't want to make a mistake. But that's actually how we learn and grow. And if you can start to embrace your mistakes, and they're not even a mistake, it's a missed take, right? Let's be honest. You can't mess it up. You can't do this wrong. You're exactly where you need to be to learn the next lesson that you need to learn and, dive deeper into this exploration that is you. You cannot mess it up. And so we spend way too much of our lives stuck in these stories, these illusions, chasing these things. This is why we miss that happiness is already there. We're just piling all this other crap on top of it so we can't see it. So if we can excavate through the pile, I'm excited in here, through the pile of poop, we can start to see more clearly that it's been there all along and we've just been looking in the wrong place.
Like you said, peel all the onion things off and get out there, find out what your happy is and inside of you, get all those layers off. And if there's people around you, a lot of times we have those unhappy people around us. We have to set such a good boundaries with them, and we just can't let their negative things, what they say, you just have to block it out when they say something not nice. So because the words stay in our mind. It's just the way the brain works. A lot of those words, they stay in our mind, even if we're happy people. It still spins a little bit in our head. But we have to learn to acknowledge it, and then it can go away.
I mean, if you are someone listening who very easily gets, I'll say, stuck in this trap of taking other people's negative feedback personally, there is a way out. And it doesn't have to be this way. Because first of all, like we mentioned earlier, that's actually most likely a projection of their own insecurities. And if they were actually happy and actually giving you legitimate feedback, it would be delivered in a much different manner. So that's how you can discern there, right? Like that, the energy behind it will help you discern whether, is there something for me to pick up from this and take and learn and grow from? Or is it just a projection of their stuff? And when we can start to discern that first of all, that's a huge amount of freedom, because now we can look at it. We can say, okay, is there any validity to what they're saying? If we have an emotional response, often there's a part of us that thinks it might be true at the very least, or it is true, or we're worried that it could be true. But oftentimes, if we actually look at it, we can just see that it's more likely a projection of what someone else is feeling on the inside. And it's not actually us. And here's the thing. Nobody is an expert on you except for you. So whatever the people are saying is all filtered through their own lens. So even if they have something to say that may hit a nerve in you, or may actually have some, basis in reality from your experience, you're still the expert on you. And so you don't actually have to let someone who doesn't know every experience and every thought and every idea and every piece that is you. You don't have to let them tell you who you are, right? I know this is easier said than done, but this is something that you can work towards. The more aware you are that you're the expert on you, like literally no one out there knows you as well as you do. And so while it is your individual work to do, and this self-discovery is your work, it can be helpful to have people in your life as a mirror to help reflect, to help you explore, to help you ask those difficult questions. Because let's be honest, there's a safety mechanism built in. We ask ourselves a question that gets uncomfortable, we just run away. We're just like, that, not answering that. But when we have a safe space to explore, and especially if we haven't had practice doing that or haven't had models.
Yeah, it takes practice.
That, right? It's not something that the majority of us have had modeled or have been taught. They don't teach this in school. They don't teach emotional regulation or intelligence or any of these things in school, and they really should.
Mhm.
So it's not your fault if you don't have these skills yet. And you can learn them. Like very easily, you can learn these skills and put them into practice every day and make every day better and better and
Mhm.
better. Not because there's something wrong with you and you need to constantly improve, but because you're already whole and you can just create this more and more and more incredible experience from this state of wholeness. And that is really freeing to know that you're the expert on you. You're the one that has the answers. You don't have to look out there. And I've done my share of looking out there and thinking someone else would have the answer or the strategy or the technique or, all of these things. It was all a distraction. The truth is I had all of my answers within me.
Mhm.
And it's helpful sometimes to have someone to help bring those answers out, right? If you don't have that particular skill of excavating those answers, those truths from within, or figuring out, who you really are, it can be really helpful to have someone with experience to walk by your side to help you ask those difficult questions that your innate system would be like, no, thank you. Like, I don't want to answer that one. I don't want to look at that. That's too much. But having a safe space to do that in with someone who's going to hold you and actually allow you to be yourself, to be fully, wholly human is actually so healing in itself. And again, I know I had a different sort of definition of healing where the healing is not like you're broken, something needs to be better to be
Mhm.
healed.
Mhm.
But this healing is like expansive. This healing is opening up to all of the possibilities and to creating from infinite, opportunities that exist for you. And so having a space can be so, so powerful in which you can start to do this inner work that is yours and yours alone, but we're not meant to do it alone. We're meant to live life in community. We're meant to
Mhm.
support each other. I know we're not living in a world that really promotes that these days. We're what's more promoted is divisiveness and us versus them thinking and black and white and either or. It's not the truth. That's all an illusion. We can have, the life that we really want when we start to see things from a new perspective. So just invite you to try on some of these new perspectives. Try on both and maybe more than one thing can be true at once, right? What would happen if you allowed yourself to believe that you can have one preference and someone else might have a very different preference based on their experience, and it's all okay. It doesn't make anybody wrong or bad or anything, right? It just is. It's all part of this divine human experience. And like I said, it's fascinating to watch other people have their different unique human experiences. Literally 8.1 billion people and counting. That's how many different experiences and
Mhm.
individual people are on this planet. And there's only one you. So embrace that to the fullest and live your life exactly as you were meant to, not as you think somebody else wants you to live, but
Mhm.
how your heart is telling you to live. That's where your freedom comes in.
Yeah. Investigate yourself for the viewers. Investigate yourself. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start wrapping up in a little bit as well. But what I wanted to say, when people try to get their layers out and they always been thinking negatively, there's what are your points for them how to start? If they think like
Yeah.
in their mind, it's like they don't understand right now, they're listening and they don't understand what we're talking about because in their mind, their thoughts are negative.
I have been there. So, first of all, if that's you, I see you and I understand, and I have been where you are. For me, and again, everyone might be slightly differently. So, I'm going to share my experience. And again, I invite people to try it on, see if it fits, wear it around. And if it does, great, keep wearing it. If it doesn't, that's okay. You can set aside and try something else. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong about it or about you. What really worked for me was building a daily meditation practice. And so for me, my meditation practice, and I will preface this by saying you can't mess this up. You can't do meditation wrong. The purpose of meditation, if you get that right, it's all about your intention. If you get that right, it will work for you. Okay. You don't have to shut your mind off. You don't have to sit perfectly still. It's not about that. The
Mm-hmm.
intention behind it is just simply creating space. Okay. It's
Mm-hmm.
like looking for the space between your thoughts, right? And in this space between the thoughts that, especially if they're negative, uh, like I call it sort of like in my book, I call it the a-hole mind. Okay. is this negative thoughts and these critical thinking and the worst case scenarios and all of these things that can bombard you. If you can create just a tiny bit of space, like the tiniest, again, you're not trying to shut your mind off. Okay. That's impossible. But if you can create the tiniest bit of space, you can choose in that moment, right? You can observe in that moment that these thoughts are coming, but they're not you, right? You can just create this tiny space where you're observing and noticing versus being the one who's critical. You're now observing that critical voice just this much removed from it. And this allows you to not take all of that on, right? You can look now at these thoughts and like it's a movie screen playing in front of you. No, that I don't like that one. This one says you're lazy and ugly. Oh no, I don't think so. I don't want to believe that. I choose not to believe that because it doesn't feel good, right? And we have this inner barometer within us that is very easily testable, but we haven't been taught to use it as a skill. It's like our inner intuition, or I call it the inner barometer. If it feels good, it's typically in alignment. Now, I'm not talking about temporary feels good. I mean, feels like home kind of feels good, like feels like peace and love and joy and freedom. Not like, oh, that's a great dopamine hit and now I feel crappy. Not that. But really, truly in our being feels correct for us, right? When we can be in that state, we can start to recognize those negative thoughts, those critical things, those worst case scenarios, that's not us. It doesn't feel good. They're based in fear. And anything that is truly us is not based in fear. The true us is love. So this is how I typically tell people to discern between whatever thoughts are in their mind, what's you and what's not you. If it's fear driven or negative, or makes you feel badly or negative, or this tension, not you, because you are love. And so the loving, the kind, the inspiring, the uplifting, the empowering thoughts, those are you. The rest of it is not you. So if you can create this tiny bit of space, right, through meditation. And again, the meditation is just literally, for me, looking for the space between your thoughts so that you can observe them, so that you can see. And now you can use this discerning lens. Fear-based, that's not me. Love-based, those are really me. And move forward and focus on the love-based ones. And that's okay. You don't have to shame yourself for feeling those negative thoughts. We all have them. I still have them.
They're automatic. That's the most important thing. Don't be guilty about having, and when you have that emotion, that different emotion that comes right away, that's really that's the trigger. But your reaction, you delay your reaction just a few seconds, and you don't have. And sometimes we still react right away.
Yeah,
but we can reflect back and adjust our reaction.
Yeah, I always say
keep on going with it.
Yeah, I always say, like, we're so cute when we're human. Sometimes we're gonna have those reactions, and then we're gonna look back and we're like, oh my gosh, like I did that again. And we can so easily beat ourselves up, like, oh, I did it again. Like I messed up again, the same pattern again and again. But I invite you, if that's you and you're starting to observe that there's a pattern, you are miles ahead of where you ever used to be, because we don't know what we don't know. But when we know, we can start to change it. And I would also, put out there that you're never the same person. You're always growing. You're always seeing things from a different perspective. And so, as you grow and you have these experiences, even if it's a repeating pattern that is not really serving you, every single time you observe it, you are taking another, you're viewing it from a higher and higher vantage point with more wisdom, more knowledge, and more experience. So the truth is, you're never really going backwards, even though sometimes it can feel like it. So the guilt and the shame just doesn't serve. What you need in that moment is actually self-compassion to say, hey, you know what? When I did that thing, I didn't see it that way. And now I do.
Exactly.
Not to feel bad about what happened, but to rewrite the story like, hey, I was doing what I thought was best.
Yeah.
And now I see things differently. And moving forward, I can make a shift. And again, that meditation also creates space for consciously choosing how to move forward. Right. So it's not only helpful for dealing with emotional type triggers, it's really helpful in just consciously creating with intention the life that you want, so that you're reacting, you're being purposeful, you're being intentional about how you're being, the things that you're doing, and what you're creating with that. Otherwise, anything's possible. And if we're not actually consciously creating it, it's just creating itself anyways, manifesting out of our probably manifesting automatically on autopilot out of our past, right? And this is why people stay stuck in their comfort zone, quote unquote comfort zone, because it is a little bit more easy to just let things roll on autopilot. Humans love convenience. So here we are with lots of people living in that comfort zone and feeling the tension, like they're in the comfort zone. It's not actually that comfy at all, but they're not sure how to get out of it. That's really the problem. It's not actually comfy. It's just that they don't see the route out. And so if you can get to this clear space, even for moments at a time, I'm talking about like milliseconds will help you. And as you practice it will become seconds, and then it will become maybe a minute. Maybe it will expand beyond that, but there's really no right or wrong. As long as you can start creating that space, and then you can actually start to see the choices that lie before you, which gives you the power to create things a little bit differently.
Yeah, those are all good skills. And what would be your closing words for then? I know happy people, they watch and they feel more happiness, but I try to go to the people who they watch happy, again, they look at happy people and they don't understand it yet. So let's close up with some kind of one really short way of they thinking differently today.
I think that there is a lot of pressure out there to fake it till you make it. People use that saying an awful lot, fake it till you make it, which means to put on a smile even when you're not, to push through, to do things even though you're afraid. And there's some validity to doing things afraid, because you're never going to feel completely ready. But there's a lot of pressure to push yourself and do the thing and be what you want to be. And I invite you just to be in a space that recognizes that you're okay right now, right here, wherever you are, because that's where you're starting. And it doesn't mean that everything is perfect or awesome. It doesn't have to mean that at all. It just means that you allow things to be as they are, that you allow yourself to be as you are without, beating yourself up or listing all of your shortcomings or any of these things. If you want to be more happy, you start with accepting how things are to start with. And the things that you can't accept, you take action to change. Baby steps, and you take action and you change them, starting in here. So instead of fake it till you make it, I like to change it up, and I like to say, be it until you see it, because this is a state that you can control inside. And if you want to be a happy person, you choose to be happy here and now in this now moment. And if you can't master being happy now, you're going to struggle to find happiness later too, because every later moment is now too, right? As the time comes, it becomes now. And so your greatest power is to choose right here, right now, in this moment, to just be happy, to be okay, to allow what is without all that resistance. And the more that you can practice doing this, even if it's just for a split moment, that's okay. This is, you don't have to choose it forever, just for a moment. Just try it on, just for a brief moment. See how it feels. And see if you can just keep choosing it over and over and over. And eventually it will become a habit. You'll eventually see no way to not do that. It will just happen on autopilot. Like your negative thinking is happening on autopilot, your positive thinking will start happening on autopilot.
Exactly.
You'll become your own biggest cheerleader. And it starts with just one choice at a time.
And I will add from my side, and then we're going to end, and add smile to that.
Yeah, it tricks your brain, right? It's actually a good psychological trick to trick your brain, like biohacking, into believing that you really are happy. I used to teach fitness, and when I made my participants do burpees, I always told them to smile to trick their brain into thinking they're happy. So that's a great tip.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, we're gonna end, but I ask all my guests that doesn't matter what kind of podcast. Oh, first for the viewers, all the descriptions are all the links for Christy's websites and podcasts. So definitely go on the description, click on her podcast so you can watch her podcast, sign up for subscribe to her YouTube so you can keep on watching things how to create you happy.
Yeah.
And Christy, now the final question. What makes you happy?
Oh gosh.
Personally, that's what other people think that happiness is, not all like what makes you happy.
I love being in nature. And I find that being out in nature, whether it's the ocean or the mountains or a park, I find that being in that space allows me to connect more deeply with the divine within and the creator of all that is, God, source, universe, however you want to label that. It allows me just to feel this immense state of peace. And that's what probably makes me the happiest, just creating this space of calmness and being in nature connected to all that is.
That's perfect. Okay, we're gonna end on that. And for the viewers, take all the knowledge, go subscribe on Christy's website, YouTube, and go have fun. Go enjoy life and go have fun. Bye.